the reporter appointed by the Scottish ministers to report to them on the application for the Kirkan wind farm. And the purpose of this meeting is to consider progress towards the inquiry, which is due to commence on Tuesday, 11th January 2022. I hope we can keep this meeting fairly short. It's one of the advantages of being of having a virtual meeting. Just to confirm who's present, we've got Dr. Gordon, we've got Mr. Trinick, and we've got Mr. Finlay. Amy McDougall, I assume, is with Mr. Trinick. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right, that's grand. We don't seem to have Dr. Hedger. I think she was planning to be here. Well, I'll just check. Callum, are you there? Graham?
Yep, Dr. Hedger has just joined now, I think.
Oh, she's just joined. Okay, great.
It might take a second to load it.
Okay. There she is.
There she is.
Hello, Dr. Hedger.
Hello, Dr. Hedger.
Hello there.
Good. I'm getting a little bit of feedback from your computer, Dr. Hedger. If you could maybe mute while you're not speaking, that would be great. Thanks. Okay, so as I say, this meeting is to consider progress towards the inquiry, and I've set out a number of points on the agenda, which I hope is fairly full and explains what we're talking about. Nobody's mentioned anything else that they want to talk about the meeting, so I hope this is all we need to talk about. So in terms of the draft inquiry programme, I set out a programme in the annex to the agenda. And I think in item 3, all I wanted to ask was, does anyone have any comment on the programme? And does anyone have any estimate, or what estimate can people give at this stage as to the length of their evidence and how long the inquiry might take overall, so we can reach a view? Mr. Trinick, perhaps you can go first.
Thank you, sir. Yes, no comments on the programme. There was a note further on the, actually in Annex 1, about the need for a hearing session on policy, or maybe it's elsewhere. I maintain there is a need for a hearing session on policy for reasons I can give if necessary. Against that background, my time estimates are as follows. In chief, I've got certainly one witness, Mr. Denny, at 40 minutes evidence in chief. If the need arises, I will call Mr. Spavin, dealing with regulatory matters in relation to aviation lighting, and Professor Best, who presents us as a written report, 15 minutes each at most. And I think we need to return to whether or not they're needed later in the agenda. It's cross-examination, Simon Hanson, 2.5 hours. Mr. Gordon, up to 15 minutes. Dr. Hedger, up to 15 minutes. And a total time estimate for the inquiry, it's always a guesstimate, but say 2.5 days.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Mr. Trinick. We'll come back to the point about the need for Professor Spavin and Mr. Best. Yeah. Mr. Finlay.
Yes, sir. Just taking the matters in the order that Mr. Trinick dealt with them. I'm not surprised he feels there's a need for a policy session given the new draft MPF4. So I wouldn't be resisting that on that topic, but I hope that it could be, and you're in control of it in a sense. So I can see that would be sensible given that production. but I don't think that will necessarily take a great deal of time. I think parties will have set out their views, no doubt fairly fully in their hearing statements, but I can see that there'll be some sense in that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of witnesses, at present, unless I'm instructed otherwise, I have no questions for Spaven or Best. So I don't think it's any part of my case to wish to cross-examine them. Right. For Mr. Denny, I would say half a day. It's difficult to be precise at this stage, which is more or less equates with Mr. Trinick's 2.5 hours. Perhaps is a little bit more, but he will be the first witness. In evidence in chief, Mr. Heinsohn might be half an hour, if that, and I agree that it's about 2.5 days, and be unlikely to go beyond 3.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Dr. Gordon.
Yes, sir. If I could just take a couple of minutes of the inquiry's time at this point, it may be beneficial in the long run. We have been working on our objection, preparing materials, and realised that essentially everything we wanted to say is contained within our original objection.
Mm-hmm.
It seems rather pointless to just rework that, to resubmit it so that you get the same material 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
However, obviously we made that objection some time ago. We would like to submit an updated objection, taking account, without going into detail, but obviously taking account of policy changes and also taking account of material available from the Lookout extension 2 application, which has been consented, and the redesign which has been submitted. So we're not altering in any substantial way our objection, but we would like an opportunity to restate it. What I'm not sure is whether within the rules we could submit an updated objection statement together with any material we refer to in that is not otherwise in the core documents, and in other respects simply withdraw from the inquiry.
You mean simply provide a written statement to the inquiry? And
yes. A written statement, which I emphasise would be essentially an updating of the objection that's already been submitted. So we're not going into new territory.
But perhaps I'll just ask Mr. Trinick first whether he has any view on that. Mr. Trinick, do you have any view on that?
Mr. Gordon always plays very, very fair in these proceedings, and so I've got no great concerns about what he suggests, provided that the updated representation. I think it's just terminology here, whether you call it a report or an updated objection. I don't care. It's just evidence. Provided it comes in within the timetable you have laid down, we have the opportunity to answer anything new in precognitions.
Right.
That makes it perfectly fair.
Yeah.
It can be submitted today, so.
Right. I certainly have no difficulty with that. So and if you're able to submit today or by the 6th of December, that would be fine. Absolutely. So if you're so you would submit that and you would take no further part.
That's correct, sir.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Hedger.
Sorry, sir. I was just going to say I shall stay in this meeting, but I anticipate taking no further part in that either. Thank you.
Okay. No, that's fine. Of course. Yes. Dr. Hedger. Do you have a view on the draft inquiry program or on the or an estimate of how long your evidence might take? Oh, you're muted, Dr. Hedger. Thanks.
I submitted quite a brief objection. I'm I'm aware I'm constrained to think 3,000 words after the 6th of December. I think that's right, isn't it?
Well, it's supposed to be 2,000 words, but I'm not sure if the other parts are prepared to be flexible.
Well, it will. Sorry,
Dr. Hedger was going to be allowed to. There's a bit of feedback.
If you could just mute for a moment, Dr. Hedger, and perhaps Marcus, Mr. Trinick can say what he's going to say.
I think it may save time if I say this quickly, that Dr. Hedger was to be allowed further time after the 6th,
yes,
but with the intention of getting it in as long before the 20th as possible, or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is to be no word limit at all on those representations.
Right, okay.
We wouldn't ask for any word limit. Right.
Okay, so Dr. Hedge, you want to continue and unmute again?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not intending to submit an enormous report, and I'm still hoping to do it as soon as I can. Mm. I've only got one other point for the whole of this session. Actually, I don't know if I can raise it now or.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I wanted to make the point that in terms of public inquiry advertising, that's what I wanted to make the point about. Do you want to consider that now?
We were going to come on to that, but if you want to say it now, that's fine.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll say it now. Then I could disappear then as well. I needn't come back in again. Yeah, I think the intention is as was originally to advertise in the Rochard Journal. Well, I have a concern that that's not really read much north of Dingwall and Garve, and I do think that you should advertise the public inquiry in the local papers in Ullapool and Gairloch. Mm. And I've just checked out the obviously with local papers, the Christmas issue is obviously big with all sorts of stuff. So I've got dates about when you'd have to put that in for their last edition, and there won't be any in the new year. So they have like a 3-week break, so you can't sort of do it early January or anything. Mm-hmm. So I do think it's important that you the public inquiry is advertised not just south of the wind farm but north, as it does affect it does affect the routeway. And also the hinterland.
I did look into the question of advertising. Could you mute yourself for just a moment, because I can hear a lot of feedback. Thanks. I did look into the question of advertising beyond the Rochester Journal. It seems that our kind of list of newspapers only has the Stornoway Gazette, which is perhaps not the most appropriate one. Beyond that, if you're able to email to the case officer suggestions for newspapers, I think that might take the advertisement. We could look at that. I'm not sure what sort of procurement procedures the Scottish Government has to go through to procure an advert in smaller journals or journals we don't have listed already. But if you can let me know the details of where you think it should be advertised. I saw there was an Ullapool paper, but it didn't appear to be one that we had some kind of relationship with in terms of procurement. Oh, you need to unmute again.
No, we've only gone about this. Certainly, I'll send you the details. But they're both of them are, robust publications, which have routinely seem to me to have, public advertisement announcements about relevant things.
Right.
So I think it's entirely appropriate. I'm a bit concerned that the procurement dimension. I mean, they're not very expensive. So hopefully you could be flexible somehow. There we are. So okay, fine. I'll send you the full details later on this morning. Okay.
That'd be great.
Thanks very much for your attention.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the next point we had on the agenda was regarding the inquiry and hearing sessions when they start. And basically, we've had no. Obviously, the intention is still to carry on in person, to have an inquiry in person in, in the Ben Wyvis Hotel in Strathpeffer. Obviously, the Omicron variant has appeared. We don't know what effect that'll have. So we may have to change that to an inquiry by video conference, assuming everyone is willing to proceed in that way. But as things stand, we would proceed with an in-person inquiry, and that's what we're planning on. Does anyone have any concern about if we had to swap to a video conference? Does anyone have any concern about that? Ms. Trinick, no. Okay, good.
No,
Right.
I mean, I hope the need won't arise. It can be done at fairly short notice, frankly.
Yeah, I think that's right. I produced some rules for COVID safe procedure at an in-person inquiry, and I've sent you a draft of those. There was one thing I missed out of that, which I put into the advert, and that's to ask people to take a lateral flow test before arriving at the inquiry. I think so. I would add that. Does anyone have any other comments on the inquiry rules? Ms. Trinick. Oh, you're muted, Ms. Trinick. I can't hear you.
Apologise. Not on the rules we've circulated, no comments on those, but on attendance in the room and 3 people for the applicant. That will be fine, so long as I don't need to call Mr. Spavin and Professor Best, who
Right.
give evidence on broadly the same topic as Mr. Denny, and who would need to join me in the room while one or the other was giving evidence.
Right.
So we need to tackle that topic now.
Ah, yes, of course, yes. I should have. Well, I think Mr. Finlay doesn't have any questions for Mr. Spavin or Ms. Best, does he? So Mr. Gordon won't be there. So it's really Dr. Hedger. Are you making a case in relation to aviation lighting?
No, I might make a passing comment on the issue, but not a case.
Mm-hmm. Okay. On that basis, Mr. Trinick, do you feel that you need to have Mr. Spavin, Ms. Best there?
I don't think so. I would anticipate that any comment that Dr. Hedger makes, it will be in opposition to the views of Mr. Denny, rather than the regulatory views of Mr. Spavin or the scientific views of Professor Best. So on that basis, I don't propose to call them.
Good. Okay. Right.
They are available, though, if required.
Yes. The other draft I sent around was a draft of the advertisement. Does anyone have any? I know that the applicant had a comment on the description in the advertisement. So perhaps, Mr. Trinick, has that been bottomed out yet, or are you going to write to me on that?
I think we prefer to write to you. I think we're in discussion with the Highland Council on that, and I'd rather not deal with it. I'd rather deal with it offline and come back to you if I may.
That's fine. Okay. Is there any other comments on the advertisement?
Just one second. The advertisement you say should state the public may make comments in writing on the evidence of the inquiry by a date 1 week after the close of the inquiry. I think that's fine if people have opted in, but not if they just sit there watching it from some other part of the globe and decide they'd like to say something. That's a different matter.
You mean if they've produced a written objection previously?
Well, that's opting in really. But, okay, I'll extend it to that. But there must be some evidence of prior engagement in the process, and not simply I don't like what they're saying, so I'll write something about it. That wouldn't be acceptable.
Okay. Do you have a view on that? Does anyone else have a view on that? Dr. Hedger?
Well, I'd have thought you're well able to take your own assessment of those sorts of statements. But that's, yeah. So I think you can't, if you start being restrictive, it's quite difficult to derive fair rules.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I understand the position, I'll consider what to do further. I mean, I can certainly see your position, Mr. Trinick. Given the level of response, I mean, I wasn't anticipating a lot of people responding in any case, but it may be that if it's advertised further, there will be more interest in the inquiry.
Well, yes, sir. Well, if people don't come to the inquiry, happen to watch it on screen, have never taken part in the process to date, except for an objection made 2 years ago, and then decide to raise a point, there is the danger they raise something which wasn't dealt with in the inquiry at all.
There is that danger, yeah.
And the danger of reopening the inquiry. There is a danger here, and I think that it would not be normal to allow people who've taken no part in the inquiry process, absent COVID regulations, to then try and make representations after the inquiry is closed. That would be abnormal.
Yeah, it's not quite. I'm sorry. So could you mute for a moment, Dr. Hedger? Because I was. Or perhaps I'll take what you say first, and then we can move on.
Can you hear me? Sorry,
yes,
yeah. Well, the only thing is we're not normal, are we, at the minute? And there's a long passage of time, both in terms of policy and also the impact of COVID restrictions. So that's the only thing I would say. I take Mr. Trinick's point about it not being normal procedure, and I quite agree. We don't want it completely blown open. I think that's unlikely from the view of the limited advertising that's being undertaken. Quite frankly, it's not like we're advertising it on social media in general. So that works anymore now.
I suppose the reason I put this in, and I know we didn't discuss it at the previous meeting. The reason I put it in was because it has been the custom in the past to have sessions for the public to comment on a Section 36 inquiry as part of a kind of an evening session or a session where it's convenient for the public to come to comment. And in the previous inquiry in which we ran in which we asked the public to stay away, we gave them an opportunity to express their views in writing, necessarily following the inquiry. That was as far as I got in my reasoning, Mr. Trinick. Do you find that problematic?
No, sir. I mean, I'm fully in favour of allowing the public to take part, but you could invite comments from the public before the close of the inquiry perfectly easily, and I think that's the way to do it, rather than waiting until it's closed.
Well, perhaps we should do that then. Perhaps we could simply put in the advert that the comments should be received maybe by the end of the first day of the inquiry. Yeah. Okay. That's maybe the way to do it. Dr. Hedger.
Sorry to come back in again. As I said, I wouldn't. Well, the only issue is, of course, it's not just it's the whole Christmas period and the general shutdown, which we're now beginning to enter. So that's the other issue, that will people have enough time and energy and resources, especially now they've not been hit with the Omicron stuff. That's all. So perhaps you could just take that into your consideration. That's all. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'll consider that, and perhaps if it was the end of the second day of the inquiry, if we're expecting the inquiry to last 3 days, we could deal with it that way. Okay. In terms of documents, I know there's been some discussion with the case officer as regards the compilation of a document list, but it'd be helpful if you could just say each party say where they're at in terms of the compilation of documents, the progress on agreed matters, and progress on draft conditions. I will start with Trinnick.
Yes, sir. I think conditions. There are some final detailed discussions taking place on a very limited number of conditions with Highland Council. There's been a good interplay there. I think we're on track for the 6th of December.
Good.
For a list. There may be points not agreed, but they've been minimised, I think. And documents, the vast majority have already been uploaded to the portal.
Fantastic. Yeah.
The remainder will be there by the 6th. We did send out an email to all parties asking them if they wanted any other documents added. I understand from Amy McDougall we haven't received all responses yet. It'd be helpful if people could get back to her and let her know if there are more documents they want added. But otherwise, we're going to be okay for the 6th. Statement of agreed matters as for conditions. I think we're at the final stage of discussions with the Highland Council, and that should be ready by the 6th.
Excellent. Mr. Finlay, you agree with all of that? Do you?
I do. So I can say that very quickly. I would just say that there may be, obviously, in terms of preparing for a report, 1 or 2 more documents that may go onto the core document list come to light. Mr. Heinsohn will be in touch about those in due course. So, I have nothing further to add than that.
That's great. Okay. Now, I wrote the next section just following on from a question from Mr. Trinnick at the previous pre-inquiry meeting. Thought he deserved a fuller answer than I gave him. I suppose the question is, in terms of the case summaries that parties would produce with their closing submissions, does that answer the question more fully about what I'm looking for, Mr. Trinnick?
Yes, sir, it does. I think you get a silver star there for getting it right.
A silver star.
All right, a gold star. But I think that the key point is, which you've acknowledged, is that the case summary should not simply be a statement of the evidence before the inquiry started. It needs to be a statement of the evidence as it appears to be after an examination of the evidence. Mm-hmm. And if that's what's intended, and it seems to be, then I'm perfectly happy.
That's certainly what I would be looking for. Yeah, yeah. Mr. Finlay, do you have any concern about that? Or?
No particular concerns. It's a question of how much detail one would need to go into, but I think it's probably, this is the first time I think those case summary or Highland Council have, so that we shall no doubt gain experience as it goes. And indeed, not necessarily involving awarding of stars, but feedback in due course, not on the merits, but on the content might indeed be useful if this is going to be a continuing feature, so that we produce something that is of use to reporters generally. So, but apart from those general comments, no, nothing.
Good. Well, perhaps we could go with what I've written, and perhaps that could be developed into more general guidance if it seems to work. And the idea is very much to simply to replace what reporters were doing in terms of producing summaries of parties cases. So hopefully we can that will work well enough. Site inspections, I just simply mentioned there that parties, I'm happy to receive recommendations from parties about locations I should visit. Yeah.
So if it helps at that, I did ask Amy McDougall before this meeting, and we have no additional locations we want you to visit.
Other than the viewpoints, yeah.
Exactly so.
And I was actually finding the material on the kind of walk into the viewpoints. It's quite helpful even in terms of seeing the wild land as well on those walk-ins. I did think there was a couple of other walks I needed to take through the wildland, but I didn't think. I think you had some suggestion of using an Argo cat at the last meeting, but I don't think. I think there's a couple of things I need to do. I think particularly going up onto Amphirkagach, but I don't think I'd need an Argo cat to do any of that. There seem to be paths going up in that direction.
Well, the offer's there, sir, if you need it, but I'm fine.
Okay, good. Right. I've updated the inquiry timetable as well. I don't think there's anything terribly controversial there, but does anyone have any comments on that? No, good. Well, that's grand. Are there any other matters coming up before the inquiry? No, we'll just see the documents when they're submitted in due course. Good. Well, thank you very much. As my grandmother used to say, thank you for coming for such a short time. So I don't know what she meant by that. Oh, Mr. Finlay, do you want to say something?
I think Dr. Gordon wants to say something.
Oh, Dr. Gordon, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, sir, it's just if you're walking up Amphirkagach and you're planning to go from the west end of Loch Glascarnley. Right. Then I just caution you on crossing the Garve.
Right, okay. Oh, there, okay, yes.
It is quite notorious as a tricky crossing.
Right, I was thinking more of going up from Loch Drum.
Yeah, it's possible to go up from Strathvake, and there's a vehicle track one side of the way, and it is a substantially safer route. I think it would be most unfortunate if an inquiry had to rerun due to the demise of a reporter. I just thought I'd offer that advice, sir.
Well, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. I've noted that. Good. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone.
Excellent.
Thank you.